Welcome to today's session, Engaging PD in a Virtual World. For our panel today, we have three presenters who will share some lessons learned throughout this past year of both participating and facilitating virtual professional development. First, we have Jenna Dawson. Jenna is a digital integration specialist with Hillsborough County Public Schools out of Tampa, Florida, and she works with the district's professional development department, offering technology trainings to teachers. Next, we have Scott Bricker from Santa Margarita Catholic High School in California. He is the director of Ed Tech at his school. And then lastly, we have Megan Lipinzik. She's a business development manager for Screenbeam and also a former educator as well. So let's begin with our first question. Describe a digital curation strategy you have found to be successful for organizing and facilitating professional development materials. When organizing digital content, there are a few things that I found to be successful. The first is consistency. Next is using indentions or bullets to organize different pieces of text. And finally, visual cues. It's always fun to use an emoji to spice up your content and make it more visually appealing for your learners. So I'll give you an example. In our district, we use Canvas as our LMS, our learning management system. So inside of our Canvas course, for all of our trainings that we offer, we provide participants with a homepage. Now this homepage is consistent in every course, so if we have those teachers that come back for continued professional development, everything is branded accordingly and consistent so people know how to get around our course and materials. So I'm going to click into modules, which is kind of like a table of content view, if you will. And I'm going to just scroll down to a module that we use for training. So a lot of our professional development materials, now that we have Canvas, have transitioned into Canvas. And we no longer, in a lot of cases, using a PowerPoint to present our content. Instead, we're using Canvas as our hub of materials. So here is basically like what would be normally on a PowerPoint slide, but instead on Canvas, so you can present from here or participants can follow along as you go. Also, you'll notice that I've used emojis as a way to provide visual cues to participants or teachers that are taking this training and looking for materials. The use of those emojis, and you can see the indentions and the text headers, keeps the content organized, and you know which pages and pieces belong to that overarching header. You also may notice that the emojis that are used as those visual cues are also connected to the content that is in that text in that same line. So you can see as we scroll down, you'll see those emojis and the consistency of organization will continue. If you want to add emojis as visual cues, no matter where you are inside of a course or a page or in Microsoft Office, Word, anywhere on a Windows device, you can use a Windows shortcut. Now there's other shortcuts depending upon the device, but I'm on a Windows device, so I'm going to share that. All you do is hold down the Windows plus the period, and up comes a shortcut to find any of the emojis that you would need. You simply select the one you want. You can even start typing. And you'll see that they appear. Then you can click update and your emojis will be saved. In addition to using emojis as visual cues in Canvas, I've also found great experience in using them in Microsoft Teams as well. Inside of this team, this is a group of educators who meet on a monthly basis, so we use this team to schedule our meetings and to house files and documents from each of our weekly our monthly meetings. So in the Files section, to make it easier for participants to navigate, we've used emojis to organize the different content in the folders. So if I wanted to find something from a particular monthly meeting, I would click into our meetings folder, and then I can, at a quick glance, know which month I need to navigate to based on the visual cue.
Still to this day, my favorite tool in the entire 365 suite is OneNote. It does everything. I love how it keeps me organized, keeps track of everything for me, whether in my day-to-day job or my workings with students in the classroom. It's an amazing tool. And so we wanted to leverage that at my school, and so we created an EdTech training manual inside of OneNote. So you can see, here's my EdTech training manual section group that I'm in. It's inside of our school faculty notebook, so we created a faculty or staff team that all of our teachers get loaded into. And then inside of that staff notebook, we just created this EdTech training manual. So I've got all the sections and all the different section groups and training on all the different tools and aspects of our program. One of the nicest features is the ability to create a table of contents like this, and you do it through links. So if I want to link to a certain section, we happen to use the TI Nspire calculator here. So if I wanted a link to this section, I can just right-click and copy link to section. I can also do that on a particular page, right-click a page and copy link to that page. And then I can create these hyperlinks just as you would in a PowerPoint or a Word document or anywhere else. And that's exactly what these things are. So my table of contents, if I want Teams training, I just click on that link and it takes me directly to the Teams section of all the different pages of training that we have there. So the ability to use, shortcuts and quick access like that is fantastic. And then just the ability to store information. Of course, I can print to OneNote, I can type, I can bring images in, I can embed videos. Basically any digital content that I need, I can put into OneNote. And the fact that OneNote is searchable is fantastic. It's greatly decreased the number of questions we get. Our faculty just go right to the notebook, they search for what they want, and they can go right to it and locate a password or a code or even step-by-step instructions. So it's definitely an undertaking in the beginning. It's a lot of work to get it up and running, but once you have it up and running, I find it to be a great resource, and I think something that will really benefit you and your teachers as well.
What considerations have you come to know about the recipients of your virtual PD offerings? After spending the past year solely offering virtual professional development opportunities to teachers, I have come to know a few key takeaways in order to be successful on this endeavor. The first, never assume pre-existing knowledge or understanding about a tool or a platform. 2, make sure to vary the content to account for those who are beginners and those who are experts. This is what we call differentiated professional development. And 3, provide sequential, step-by-step directions that are clear and easy to follow. This also helps educators to be able to refer back to these at a later date and time once the training has ended.
I think Jenna absolutely nailed it with her first 3 takeaways there, talking about what's going on in the training room. I'm going to add to that and look at more of a big perspective that I think adds to the conversation, and that is the consideration that teacher stress is real. This last year has been a lot on our teachers. We have more folks considering leaving the profession or wondering what they're doing based on how things have gone in the last 12 months. So folks that used to be at a 10 are now at a 40. Folks that used to be at a 40 are now at a 70. All of our buttons are easier to push, easier to set off, and teacher stress and pressure is very real. So keep that in mind. Give some grace to the folks that you're training while you're enacting some of those strategies that Jenna was talking about clear and concise directions, things of that sort. But just remember that everybody comes at it with a little bit of baggage on their plate. And I think it's not understating things to say that this is a critical time in education, that along with that stress and anxiety of teachers, we realize that things need to change and things can change. But that puts a lot of pressure on some people and makes some people feel kind of uncomfortable and can make them struggle in a training environment or make it difficult for them to really get on board with a new initiative or a new tool. So Remember that this is critical and everybody handles critical situations in a different level. So again, trying to understand that personal approach. And the last thing is just personally in life. It's been a great reminder that there may be more going on behind the scenes, right? We've seen that with family members getting sick and losing jobs and maybe losing a house, not being able to make a rent payment. My gosh, there are all kinds of things that people in our country are dealing with, educators and non-educators alike. And I think, remembering the human element in all of this, that there may be maybe have a little bit more going on behind the scenes, might help us as trainers and school leaders to better meet the needs of the folks that we're training.
What strategies do you use to engage adult learners during virtual professional development?
I think keeping teachers, faculty, staff, the school community involved in a learning setting is maybe even more difficult than keeping students involved these days, believe it or not. But I think there are a couple strategies you can use to keep your audience engaged and keep your professional development sessions moving forward and really vibrant and successful in the end. And the first of which is going to be to control your pace. And that can be very difficult in a virtual setting because most of us, it feels like we're talking into a vacuum. And so we tend sometimes just to ramble and go faster and faster as the session goes on. We don't have quite the same control over pace as we may do in a classroom or a training room or auditorium or things like that. So be very cognizant of your pace, pause for questions, be okay with that uncomfortable 30 to 40-second silence, knowing that people might be waiting for somebody else to step up first or not wanting to interrupt or talk over each other, as sometimes happens on a virtual or online call. The second thing I think that's really important is to find a way to let the dialogue flow, whether it's through the chat box or maybe you have a shared document somewhere, or maybe you're going to do breakout rooms, but whatever the case may be, give your folks that are attending an opportunity to discuss. Build that conversation, share that conversation, just as you would hope they would do in an online setting where you get those side conversations or little interactions between sessions across the room. Very, very important to create opportunities for folks to continue to dialogue before, during, and after your sessions. And finally, I always like to have my attendees leave with something, having done something, or leave with the ability to go and do something. We say it in the classroom all the time. We don't just want to talk at our students. We want them to leave with skills and knowledge that they can apply to their work. And I think professional development should be exactly the same. So whether it's knowing how to create a topic in Flipgrid, how to build a class notebook, or just any other educational topic that you're training on, make sure you keep your folks active. Make sure you're having them doing things so it's not just an hour or 2 hours of sit and get, because we know what happens after about 15, 20, 30 minutes. Their attention's going to wander and you're going to lose your audience. So keeping them active, staying at a great pace, and giving them opportunities to dialogue can help you have really successful sessions.
To keep adult learners engaged during virtual professional development, you must keep your content engaging. You need to know your flow, and most of all, be happy. Your delivery is important, and if you seem happy to be there, hopefully your participants will be too. How do you utilize surveys to make informed decisions about professional development?
So full disclosure, I'm a data guy. As a math teacher, as an athlete, former coach, I love stats. I love data. And I think surveying and getting data from your teachers during professional development, professional growth is essential to moving things forward. And here's kind of a few reasons why and some ways that I use it in my own practice. The first of which is it's really the voice of the people. It's a way to find out how they're feeling. Are they vibing with the type of session or the content of the session or the length of the session that you're giving? There's so many different aspects you can speak to or get your people, your attendees to speak to in those surveys. So definitely think about the questions that you put in the surveys so that you get back the results and type of feedback that you're looking for that can really lend a voice to the group that you're training. Secondly, for me, and I know many others, it's a great piece of self-reflection, the ability to look at these data points and these survey results and reflect on what went well, what didn't. Maybe you thought the first half of a session was fantastic and your attendees say, gosh, it started slow and you were kind of out of it or not in the mood, or it's a really great chance for a trainer admin, department chair, anybody, to really reflect on their own process within this PD continuum. It also really helps you map the future. We talk about data-informed decisions, evidence-based teaching, data-based teaching in the classroom. Why don't we talk about that in our professional development? So certainly let the data that you get from your surveys, the feedback that you get from your attendees, help you build that roadmap, help you lay the groundwork for future tools, future programs, and opportunities that your school and your district may take on. And lastly, it's just a great way to check progress, check in with your teachers and figure out who's doing what. If you can keep active data on surveys and attendance and notice that there's a certain department or grade level who's not attending PD, maybe there's a different group who is struggling with the PD and consistently rates the professional growth sessions on the lower end of the scale. There's a number of questions that go with that, but certainly it gives you a great opportunity to check in with your teachers and find out where they are in their process and their progress with their own professional development and professional growth.
There are a few logistics to consider if you're thinking about using surveys as a way to collect data or get that feedback from your participants during virtual PD as a way to make informed decisions moving forward. So let's take a look at some of those logistics or questions that you might need to consider. First, where will your surveys be housed? Will they be located in Microsoft Teams, OneDrive? How will other people or peers that you're working with that may need access to those surveys, how will they know where to find them or where they will be organized? Next, you need to consider who needs access to be able to edit and view those results. So for example, in Microsoft Forms, you have some different share options. You can share for the participants so they can just view it. You can share a template or you can share a collaborate link, which would then give other members of your team access to edit that form and then review the results as well. And finally, all of the questions that are included on your survey should be intentional and purposeful. So really consider, what do you plan to do with the data? Even think down to each question. If you're trying to brainstorm a question, think about, what am I going to do with that data? Think backwards planning. One way to create a survey in Microsoft is to create a form using OneDrive. You can create forms inside OneDrive by navigating to the folder where you want to store your form. Click on New, then select Forms for Excel. The same thing can be done to create a form if you have Office 365 with SharePoint Online. You navigate to the folder where you want to store your form results, click on New, and select Forms for Excel. If you're working with Excel Online, you can also create forms. Go to the Insert tab, click on the Forms button, and then select New Form from the menu. This will create a form that's linked to the current workbook. You can also create a form from the Office 365 website. So after you log into the website and select the Forms icon, you should be taken to the home page where you can create new forms and quizzes. If you don't land on the home page, you can always get there from any screen using the buttons in the top left corner of the screen that's labeled Forms. From the home screen, you're going to click on either New Form or New Quiz. When utilizing Microsoft Forms to create a survey, there are 7 types of questions available. Each has different options. The choice option allows you to define a list of possible answers for the user to select one or more answers from. The text option allows you to create long or short answer text questions. The rating option allows you to create questions with a star or number rating between 2 and 10. The date option allows the user to select a date from a calendar to answer the question. The ranking questions allows a user to drag and drop items to answer questions like order of preference. The Likert option allows you to create agree or disagree scale type questions. The Net Promoter Score option allows you to create questions like, how likely are you to recommend this training to a friend or colleague? that utilize a Net Promoter style grading. Just a tip, some question types, like the choice and rating options, allow you to copy and paste from a range in Excel or a line-separated text file. This is handy if you have a long list of choices to add. This is an example of a feedback form we use at the end of our trainings to get feedback from our participants, and we utilize a variety of different question types. You can see we have a drop-down asking which modality they attended the training. We also have a wide list of courses in our catalog that we offer. We also incorporated the calendar question for them to select the date in which they attended the training. We have a check all that apply question, fill in the blank for them to have a short or long response. We've incorporated the Likert scale, asking them to rate their level of preparedness. And we have some additional fill in the blank short response questions as well. What is one of your biggest challenges with virtual PD, and how do you work to overcome that challenge?
I have no doubt that my challenge is something you all have considered as well. I think the biggest challenge of virtual PD in the beginning and still today is really engaging and connecting with the folks in the room. And I use that room word in quotes sometimes, right, if we're all remote. But I know many of us, those of us who are classroom teachers, the reason we got into this whole thing was the relationships and the environment and the energy that a classroom or training room or training session brings to the table. So as we all have been some combination of behind our computer screens for the last 12 months, that connection has changed. But I know in me, it's forced me to really think about ways that I can still get that same connection by having little side conversations, pausing for questions, allowing people to talk and have sidebar and time to reflect, but just really, thinking creatively on the ways that we can structure this, because again, not being able to be in the room and be physically near somebody and read faces and body language and things of that sort is very challenging, without a doubt. So I encourage you to be creative in finding ways to get past that, right? To open up the opportunity for new ways of connecting that then maybe could be leveraged back in a face-to-face setting. I know we'll talk about things that we've learned here in just a minute.
While conducting virtual PD, one of the biggest challenges for me was distractions at home. Distractions at home can cause problems during virtual PD or when it comes to actual remote training, whether it be hearing dogs barking, doorbells ringing, packages being delivered, or your child running into the room. Let's face it can derail a presentation. To overcome this, I made sure I had the right noise-canceling headphones to keep me focused and on track, and it eliminated the extra noise I couldn't necessarily control.
Describe one positive aspect you have learned from offering virtual PD that you plan to instill in future endeavors. One of the positive aspects that I've taken away throughout the past year of offering these virtual trainings on a consistent basis is that live, virtual, and self-paced trainings should be options that are available to teachers. This allows you to reach a wider range of audience, of participants that will be able to attend. These modalities work well for a lot of teachers' schedules, especially if they have children or childcare or other circumstances that prevent them from attending professional development after work hours. So I have learned that having these options available allows us to reach a wider audience that we were not tapping into previously.
In the beginning of this whole pandemic a year ago, I think it was very difficult to find positive aspects of this. But as I reflect in the last 12 months, I think the biggest thing really is how we all have rallied and how we've realized that maybe this is not the most ideal setting, and certainly we don't want schools and education and professional development to be all virtual or all hybrid all the time, but that there are aspects and opportunities to capitalize on this flexibility, being able to think about a training session as more than just somebody talking at you for an hour in a room, right? Leveraging breakout rooms, side discussions, message boards, posts, even GIFs and emojis, fun things like that to create a more flexible, unique training environment, I know is something I definitely want to keep moving forward. In addition to this idea, I'm sure you've heard this term before, this growth mindset, the great work done by Carol Dweck and others, but encouraging teachers to have a growth mindset as well and to expand their horizons, add their skills, increase the number of tools they have on their workbench, and really push themselves beyond anything they imagined before. So I definitely want to continue to create those opportunities, and I certainly hope that you all will be able to do the same in your sessions.
How has this presentation demonstrated effective strategies for collaborating and co-facilitating virtual PD? Throughout this presentation, we've wanted to share lessons that we've learned and model some different examples on how to provide and facilitate virtual professional development opportunities. So as we have worked to create the content for our presentation today, one of the things that we have made sure to do is create a shared workspace. So Scott, Megan, and I have a shared PowerPoint, whether you have a PowerPoint in OneDrive or you have, we also have a shared team for different conference presentations that we work on. So some type of shared workspace where everyone has edible access to that document somewhere stored in the cloud. Megan and I are both on Eastern Standard Time here in Florida, and Scott is in California. So we need to have equal access to that file so we can collaboratively work. And Teams is a great place also because you have the chat so you can collaborate and talk about the process as well instead of having to be as formal and going back and forth through email. Another tip is to pre-record the content. For this session, I'm sure there's so many lessons that between the three of us we can share with you guys, but we only have about 50 minutes to get through all of the content. And we want to make sure we have time for questions and stuff at the end. So we wanted to pre-record our content to make sure that we got our message across. And if we needed to, we could re-record if we messed up or made a mistake or wanted to add some additional pieces. So pre-recording content is always good as well. And then that also makes it that attainable asset that participants can go back and reflect on afterwards. Because a lot of times your participants will always ask you, are you going to share a copy of the PowerPoint? So this way, a pre-recorded session can be revisited at any time. And a third tip for collaborating and co-facilitating virtual PD is to really plan out your transitions. When planning for this presentation, we talked a lot about whether we were going to do it live or we were going to pre-record, and really it came down to the logistics of the transitions and that end user experience. We figured that if we wanted to share different examples or share our screens at different points, that it would cause the presentation to be choppy, and we don't want our participants on the virtual side to get motion sickness or anything like that when presenting. So that's just something that we wanted to keep in mind. So really planning out those transitions so it is smooth by pre-recording that content, that definitely helps with that. But just consider if you were a participant on that other side of the screen, how would you feel? And keep that in mind as you are developing your virtual professional development opportunities. Thank you for attending today's session, Engaging PD in a Virtual World. On behalf of all of the presenters that spoke today, we want to thank you for tuning in and for attending NCCE 2021. We'll now take some time to open the floor for any questions that you may have. Thank you so much again for attending.